Hello everyone, I'm Vera Worthington and welcome to my tutorial for how to paint a roll of toilet paper with alcohol inks. So today I'm going to be using a small 2x2 ceramic tile and I have 3 jars of alcohol. The first one is kind of dirty. The second one is not as dirty. And the third one is my clean alcohol. And because of this crazy little pandemic, I've been reusing paper towels, so excuse the mess. And here's a neat little holder that I made out of pop sticks to keep my alcohol inks, the Copic inks, upright when I take the caps off. Now this first one here is B12 Ice Blue. And again, these are Copic inks. They're actually the marker refills. This is E35 Sand. This one is W6 Warm Gray number 6. It's not quite a brown, it's not quite a gray. It's kind of in between. It's really lovely actually. And N10 Neutral Gray number 10. Now, Neutral Gray 10 is amazing. If you never bought it, I think you should get it and try it because you can make all kinds of shades of gray from just this one color. Okay, so I am going to start by painting in a little background color. I'm thinking this toilet paper roll should sit in a bathroom that maybe has a blue wall and a little brown wood counter or shelf or what have you. And I just decided to paint this because of the current situation. We all know there's a big toilet paper shortage right now. Someday, hopefully, we'll look back on this and we'll laugh that there was a toilet paper shortage at one point in time. Or maybe it's already the future and toilet paper is plentiful and you're laughing back on this, whatever the case might be. I just thought this would be a fun little painting to do. So now I'm wiping off a little bit of that excess blue and I want to get a very straight sort of a horizon line, and I'm just going to add a little of my sand color E33 by Copic. I'm going to add that back in. And I'm going to try to get that as straight as possible. If you've ever painted with alcohol inks, you know how difficult it is to get a really straight line. So I'm trying to do the very best I can. So as you can see here, I zoomed in a little bit so that you can see the details that I'm painting in a little bit more clearly. And here I'm adding just a tiny bit of ink right on my brush. Instead of using a well palette here, I'm just adding it directly to the brush because I just needed a little tiny bit. There wasn't really a need for a well palette here. I just wanted to get this kind of as smooth and maybe a little streaky because I am doing wood grain after all, right? Okay. So now that I've smoothed out that brown wood table shelf, whatever you want to call it, I'm going to use my Fantastics to remove some of the ink. It has a foam tip and I'm going to put it into my clean alcohol and I am going to sort of draw out, as you can see, the shape of a roll of toilet paper. So I'm just kind of subtracting the ink now. The reason I do this, I know people have asked me before, like, why don't you just paint the roll of toilet paper first, or, you know, whatever it happens to be I'm painting, and then painting your background. Well, the reason I do it this way is because I want that wood grain to be nice and smooth and straight, and same with the background. I wouldn't get a nice, smooth, clean background had I painted it after the roll of toilet paper. So That's the reason why. So I feel like it looks a little neater if it's just done after. Did I waste ink? Yes, a little bit, but you know what? Don't care. This is a great method. This is the method I use pretty often for my art, whether I'm, painting a little roll of toilet paper or I don't know, a sloth or some other little critter. I just find that it keeps the edges nice and clean. And that's how I love to do stuff. So as you can see here, I'm kind of guesstimating where a little piece of toilet paper is going to be unraveled. As you could see, it's sort of sketched in a little bit there. And I'll just continue wiping off all of the ink. I just swipe my Fantastic over the areas that I want white. I'm straightening out an edge here. And then I just wipe it on the paper towel. And if it's not wet enough, I'll dip it back in the alcohol ink again. But I always blot first on a paper towel just because I don't want it so soaking wet that it causes a big blotch to come out in the middle of my work surface. I do want it a teeny bit on the dry side, but since the Fantastic has this foam material that it's made out of, the alcohol kind of sucks up into that. So you don't really have to worry so much about a big blob of alcohol spilling out onto your work unexpectedly. That's the beauty of these things. They really work great. Okay, so now that I'm done removing ink, I'm going to get a little well palette, and my inks are up. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, this is the palette that has all the blacks and the grays in it. So wait a minute. Give me one sec. I'm just going to flip through my big stack of palettes here. Does anybody else have like 14 palettes or however many? I don't know how many I have here. I might have like more like 24 palettes that are, stained with color that they just don't clean or just like reuse over and over, because I do. And I don't think I could really find a palette with the warm gray in it. So I found one that has a brown in it because I have another palette that has mostly browns. So I'm just going to take a little bit of alcohol and wipe out a well palette of brown so that I can use that warm gray 6. By the way, the warm gray 6 is right in the middle of the warm grays. The darkest of the warm grays is warm gray 10. I wanted something that was a little bit lighter for this project and a little less saturated in ink. So that's why I went with the warm gray 6 for this. So what I'm going to do with that warm gray 6 is add a little texture in the wood table, wood shelf, whatever you want to call it. And I'm, for the most part, going to use a somewhat dry brush to get those little streaks in there. I'm just doing little teeny hints of it. And here you can see I'm trying to clean that brown ink out of the well palette. I mean, that's probably crusted on there for, I don't know, a couple of months. So it's a little hard to get out of there. So bear with me while I clean this out here. When you're doing a video, you can't always plan ahead, and, I should have planned better, but sorry about that, guys. Anyway, so here I'm putting just a couple of drops of that warm gray 6 in. I could have used probably like 1 or 2 drops. I don't think I even needed that much, but now I have that dried up ink ready to use another day. So first I'm trying to grab my ink, on the edges. Like, yeah, see, I'm trying to like wipe it off a bit, but it's just not dry enough for me. So I just want that really gummy kind of ink that kind of collects around the edges. And you can see I'm dry brushing it and a little bit of it's coming out. But again, I'm blotting it on the paper towel. And I'm even just kind of waiting, wait for that alcohol to evaporate slightly. So while I'm waiting, I'm adding a little bit of that warm gray, neutral gray 10 to a well palette. And I added a little alcohol to that first well to dilute it a little. And then I just put the N10, neutral grade 10, right in the other palette. Now see this stuff? See that gummy stuff around the edges? That's what I wanted. When you dip into the middle, it's going to have more alcohol in it. But what happens as the alcohol evaporates is that a thicker, gummier ink collects around the edge of the well palette. That's the stuff I want. That's the gold. I love using a drier ink to do some of my details on things. It just works so much better than trying to dip like a really wet, saturated brush into your artwork, especially if you're trying to do some subtle or fine little details. So here I'm brushing, dry brushing. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. And now I have some little edges on the toilet paper that I want to clean up because as I did the dry brushing, yeah, it got into the little roll of toilet paper a little bit. So I'm just touching it up. I'm just getting rid of those. Yeah, you see those? Yeah, that I'm getting rid of that. I mean, it was warm gray. If it mixed with my neutral gray, it wouldn't have been that big a deal. So that's my diluted neutral grade 10. And I want to test this out. I think it might not be diluted enough. So I'm going to get just another tile and see. Yeah, that's pretty dark. Yeah, so I kind of want this to be a little bit thinned out. Yeah, I'm throwing some of that ink in the other well. Adding a little more alcohol. By the way, if you don't have one of those needle nose bottles, I'd highly suggest one. They're great for adding just a tiny bit of alcohol. And as you can see, the video kind of hopped over towards the right a little bit. That's because I wanted you to really see what I was doing here. So I'm just sketching in where that toilet paper is going to be folding over. And I'm just using that diluted gray, the neutral gray ink, to sketch that area and sort of darken it a little bit. I'm going to keep the top of the roll the whitest color and the sides are going to be more shaded. It'll still read as a white roll of toilet paper, but I want to get a little bit of those shades of gray in there just to try to make my roll look round. Now, as you can see here, I'm like really trying to blend stuff. And as my inks dry up a little, yeah, see, I'm like wetting that ink again on that little tile. As the inks start to dry that I've just laid down, it's easier to blend a little bit with your brush when it started to dry up a little bit. See, now I just am adding a little bit more alcohol there just to blend it a little further. It does take a little bit of work. It doesn't happen right away. You might have to go back into it and into it and into it and dab, 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 little teeny tiny strokes, somewhat impressionistic almost, because from a distance it'll read as shades of gray turning so it looks like a roll of toilet paper, but when you're up close, you'll see those little dashes and dabs of grays, but that's okay. This is art, people. This isn't a photograph. So we kind of want to have a little bit of interest for the eye. It doesn't have to be a perfectly smooth gradient. I think it's actually a little more interesting when it isn't. But as you can see, I go back and I keep playing with it a little bit, but it'll get there, Just have a little patience, guys, when you try this out. Just, keep going back, adding a little more alcohol or adding a little bit more ink, and you'll see eventually it'll start to come together and you'll have a really nicely looking shaded roll of toilet paper, because doesn't everybody want a nicely shaded roll of toilet paper in their lives? But I'm trying to think of who of my friends would get a kick out of this. Like, I kind of want to mail this off to somebody and just be like, I know you've been having trouble finding toilet paper, so here's a roll for you. Ha ha. And I encourage you guys to do the same thing. I would love to see your toilet paper rolls. Share them in the Alcohol Ink Art Society group with a little shout out to me so that I know you saw my fun little tutorial. And why not, paint a roll of toilet paper and send it off to a friend that has been having trouble getting toilet paper. Or what might be even funnier is to send a painting off to a friend who you know is a big toilet paper hoarder. I mean, you could say to them, well, here's one roll of toilet paper to go with your other 256 rolls, just in case you run out during the pandemic. Here's one more for you. Ha ha. So, has anybody really, really thought about why there's a toilet paper shortage right now? I've been thinking about this a lot, and I think what happened was people were thinking, oh my gosh, I might be working from home, and if my kids are out of school, we're not going to have the luxury of using the toilet paper at the office, and the kids won't be using toilet paper at school. So I'd better get some, because for the 8-10 hours a day you're out of the house, or however long it is, all those hours you'll be using toilet paper that you don't ordinarily use. So I think that's why people said, oh my God, I need to get toilet paper. They're just using more during the pandemic than they were during a regular business or school week. I don't know. That's my theory. I don't know. What do you think? Is my theory pretty good one, or is it far-fetched? I don't know. So as you can see, I'm shading that outer piece of toilet paper that's coming off the roll a little bit. And to the right of that, where it's against the roll of toilet paper, it casts like a teeny little shadow. So that's why the ink is darker next to that flapping piece of toilet paper. And yeah, I need a little more alcohol there. Okay, here we go. It's not always a bad idea to use a spare tile, blah, blah, getting tongue-tied. Use a spare tile as a palette, because sometimes those ink wells, they might just have a little bit too much ink in it, and you could thin out your inks like I've been doing here on that extra spare little tile. So I'm just dabbing and dashing little bits of ink in, trying to perfect it a little bit. I'm adding to the center of that toilet paper roll, so that's the roll part. And then I'm just about done. I'm almost there with this. What do you think, guys? Do you think it looks pretty good so far? Maybe just a little darker over there. I don't know. I'm kind of making this up as I go along. So I usually sign these things at the end with a Sharpie, which I'm going to do today. I have a whole bunch of Sharpies. I have all different colors. And I'm going to use a brown fine point Sharpie. Sometimes I use a black fine point Sharpie, but I think a brown one will be better here. Oh, and here I just took some of that almost dry warm gray 6, and I'm just doing a tiny little bit of a shadow, just ever so slightly. It's really, really being dry brushed on there. There's hardly any alcohol in that ink, but it's just gummy enough to brush in a teeny little shadow so it doesn't look like a floating roll of toilet paper. And there it is. There's my little pandemic joke, my pandemic gold, as I titled it, because these days having toilet paper is gold as opposed to what I've done a couple of times and run around to different stores in search of the toilet paper. Yes, thankfully I found toilet paper the 2 times I was desperate and needed to go out. So it helps to have friends who also tell you where they found it that very morning. And then I just finished the edges of my tile with a black Posca pen just to make it look a little more finished so you don't see brown drips or blue drips on the side. It just kind of finishes it off and makes it look more like a finished piece of art as opposed to just a tile. Well, guys, I really hope you enjoyed my little tutorial today, and I'd love to hear what you think of my toilet paper art. You can comment below, and thank you again for spending the day with me. Good luck in getting your toilet paper. I wish you a great day. Bye, everybody.